Hello, I'm John Bachman. Welcome to Newsmax TV. With us now on the phone is Congressman Joe Barton. Mr. Congressman, great talking with you again.
It's always good to talk to you.
All right, well, today President Obama announced his new plan to crack down on oil market speculators. The president says these are the people driving up the cost of oil and gasoline. Is there any truth to that?
Well, speculation is part of the market, and I can't say that they don't have some price impact, but the main price impact is rising demand and stable or more slowly increasing supplies. I mean, it's even with the Arab oil cartel and the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and things like that, it's still a demand market, and right now demand is rising more rapidly than the ability of the market to supply it. That's the primary cause of the high prices right now.
Well, the plan calls for, as the president said, quote, more cops on the beat. He wants to increase the number of people investigating and regulating illegal activity in the commodities market by 6 times. In your opinion, what kind of impact do you think that will have on oil production?
None at all. That's a simple answer. Putting more regulators isn't going to add one barrel of oil or 1 gallon of gasoline to the supply chain. Not one bit.
Well, obviously, the president and the U.S. government have no authority to regulate the commodities markets in other nations, but let's say his plan does become law. Do you think it encourages companies to simply move their oil trading businesses to other countries and other markets?
I think that would be a rational a reaction to increased oversight here, if in fact the oversight were to be punitive in nature. Markets have to be transparent, and there is a role in market oversight for the federal government and in some cases state governments. But if the primary intent is political cover, which is what I think it is in this case with the president's announcement, a rational reaction would be to move your trading over to Great Britain or offshore somewhere where you're not subject to the rigid kind of punitive gotcha type of regulation that perhaps President Obama's people might be about to employ.
Well, so let me follow up with that question. Do you think the U.S. can have any impact on other countries and prohibit the type of activity the president is talking about? In other words, is it possible for the United States to set an example, a good example?
I think it is possible, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't oversee our energy markets. I think we should, but I think it should be done in a balanced, fair-handed way where you're trying to prevent fraud, you're trying to prevent some sort of a market cornering operation. There is absolutely no evidence in the current oil market that any of that type of activity is occurring. And we've had investigations in the past, the recent past, the last 5 to 10 years, and in every case, the conclusion was that the markets are operating fairly, and it's just, again, if demand is increasing more rapidly than supply, the reaction of the market's going to be to raise the price so to balance the available supply with the increased demand. And if there's huge volatility in the market, then people hedge, and the so-called speculators try to get positions so that if prices go higher, they can cover them. And sometimes that type of activity might influence the price some, but over time, it's the basic supply-demand equation that determines the price.
Do we have the current people in place? Are there already existing government agencies and people within those agencies to adequately regulate the oil market as it stands right now?
I think the answer to that question is yes. I haven't researched it in depth, though, and I can't give you an absolute definitive that the answer is unequivocally yes. But my basic reaction is I don't think we need additional personnel in the Federal Trade Commission to do that.
Well, oil and gas prices are being used by both parties as a political issue this election year. Analysts now say that they expect global prices to peak soon, if they haven't done so already, and maybe start to ease a bit. Do you think that this issue will still be as big a part of this campaign if prices drop?
Well, let's hope that prices do drop. First of all, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Um, um, you know, we do have rising oil production in the United States, not because of President Obama's policies, but because our private sector on private land is using the horizontal drilling technology in combination with hydraulic fracturing for oil as well as for natural gas, and that is getting oil production back up, which is a good thing, a great thing, actually. The world economy is doing a little bit better, and that's increasing demand. Demand is going up much more rapidly in the so-called developing world than it is in the developed world. Demand here in the United States has actually gone down in the last several years, and our imports have gone down. So where the price point, balance point is, I don't know. I personally wish it were closer to $75 or $80 a barrel than it is to 100 to 110. Normally in the summer the price goes up because demand for gasoline and diesel goes up as Americans drive more in the summer than they do in the winter. So, that's what markets are all about, to let people take both sides of a position, and whichever side dominates brings, if the people wanting to buy oil dominate, the price goes up, and if the people wanting to sell dominate, the price goes down. So we'll find out.
Well, you mentioned, I think, one thing that everybody would like to see is a decline of prices at the pump. In your opinion, what do you think is the best way to bring down prices perhaps in the long term, or maybe just prevent these extreme spikes like we've seen this year? Is there anything that can be done?
There are a lot of things that can be done. We can reform the federal permitting process for oil and gas leases on federal lands and federal waters. We can encourage, through the use of proper incentives, additional use of an abundant domestic supply of natural gas for transportation. We can do permitting reform for our refineries, both existing and upgrades, so that it's not as expensive to operate and maintain those refineries. And we can open more of our federal lands and outer continental shelf waters to lease development. You do all of the above of those things and have a rational environmental policy, and you're going to see our supplies go up, and you're going to see prices go down.
And do you see, given the current setup of government right now with President Obama in the White House and the Democrats controlling the Senate, do you see any of that happening?
I like to say I do, but I honestly don't. President Obama seems to want to be more a rhetorical energy president than a substantive policy energy chairman. He's wasted hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on alternative energy loans like Solyndra. He has said he's not opposed to the Keystone Pipeline to bring more oil in the United States, and then turned around and personally called senators to vote against the Keystone Pipeline. So he says one thing in his press releases and his public statements, but his policies and actions go just the other way. And as a result, I think his policies have constrained energy markets, and they have caused prices to be higher than they otherwise would be.
All right, very good. Congressman Joe Barton, thanks so much for talking to us here today.
It's always good to talk to you.